So they ended up signing with Patrick Meehan and Wilf Pine and their company, Worldwide Artists. A little over 13 months later, Pine would drop out of the partnership and move on to other things. It should be noted that there is an alternate account of why Black Sabbath did not sign to Arden at the time. In the book, One of the Family, The Englishman and the Mafia, it states that Black Sabbath was told Arden was making fun and taking a piss on Black Sabbath at one of their shows. After the band heard this, they did not want anything to do with Arden. According to Pine, it was a misunderstanding and Arden did not make fun of the band.
I heard it right there.
2 weeks before their second album was to be released, Jim Simpson received a lawyer's letter informing him that he no longer represented Black Sabbath, nor was he allowed to contact them directly anymore. Jim wasn't the only one put out by this latest development. When Don Arden, who was still trying to make a backdoor move on the group, found out it was two of his own associates that had plotted behind his back to snatch up Sabbath, he was furious. Issuing threats of retribution, he also offered financial assistance to Simpson, who he encouraged to sue for damages. Simpson did and was later awarded £35,000, breaking down to £7,500 from the band and £27,500 from Meehan.
Nice little combo. For Meehan.
With Meehan at the helm, Black Sabbath became a genuine international success. The three albums that followed, Paranoid, Master of Reality in 1971, Volume 4 in 1972, and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath in 1973, all hit the UK Top 10 and the US Top 20. By 1974, the band had all the trappings of success: the country houses, flashy cars, and unlimited amounts of drugs. But after 4 years on a continual cycle of touring and recording, the band was running on empty, and everything came to a head during a gig at the Hollywood Bowl on the Volume 4 US tour where Tony Iommi collapsed. Ozzy said about the incident, "Tony had been doing coke literally for days. We all had, but Tony had gone over the edge. He walked off the stage and collapsed. It was not Tony's day." Earlier that same day, during the sound check, a crazed man tried to stab Tony with a dagger. The religious zealot was stopped by the crew, and Tony was not harmed. But as bassist Geezer Butler says, "We wanted to take a break after Tony collapsed. So the rest of the gigs for that year were canceled."
You think?
The following year, 1973, the band embarked on a tour for Sabbath Bloody Sabbath that would take them through February 1974 for the US leg of the tour, just when they thought they could take a well-deserved rest. Before the UK and Australian leg of the tour, management called to tell the band that they had been asked to play at one of the largest music festivals at the time, the California Jam, attended by 400,000 fans.
What? They had 400,000 people outside in the same place at the same time?
To tell the band that they had been asked to play at one of the largest music festivals at the time, the California Jam, attended by 400,000 fans. Geezer said, "We were in England, having just returned from the tour, when our management called us and said we had to go back out to do the California Jam. We said no, but we were eventually forced into doing it."
Just the United States.
This was just one of the ways Sabbath was getting manipulated by management. Also during this period, and unbeknownst to the band, Patrick Meehan had filtered a large portion of the royalties to himself instead of the band. Even though Black Sabbath played the 1974 California Jam Festival and received a generous $250,000 for the performance, the band members were paid only $1,000 each for their efforts.
I would have to beat you up. I would have to. Or get somebody to if I couldn't beat you up.
Osborne complained. Patrick Meehan never gave you a straight answer when you asked him how much dough you were making. Butler said it more bluntly. "We felt we were being ripped off." For Iommi, the situation with Patrick had already become unworkable, even before the band began to question his business dealings. "We could never find him when bills had to be paid," Iommi recalled. "It was a nightmare, and eventually I was left with no option but to walk away and try to pick up the pieces."
As you should. Ain't nobody rob y'all, man.
The band had long suspected things weren't above board, but they had been too scared and inexperienced to directly question how their affairs were being handled. Despite their aggressive music genre, these masters, in reality, did not like confrontations. As they learned over the summer of 1974, the reality was that they had no control whatsoever over what happened next. It was like the more you found out, the less you wanted to know, said Geezer. It was horrible. Sabbath had been snared the same way countless other acts had in the music business in the 60s. The band spent a fortune in legal fees only to discover that, in effect, they had no real money of their own. The cars they drove, the houses they lived in, all were owned on paper by Patrick Meehan and their management company. Most excruciating and potentially career damaging, they didn't even own their own music. That's why we called the next album Sabotage, said Geezer. We were potless, absolutely broke. If the band had finished there, we would have been totally destitute. So the band broke it off with Meehan and tried their hand at running things themselves. Drummer Bill Ward stepped up to fill the management void, but soon realized he didn't have the proper skill set. His alcoholism didn't help. For a while, there was no manager. Instead, various close friends and co-workers of the band worked together to take care of different duties, but none had everything it took to be the actual manager of the band. Ironically, a couple of years later, their would-be savior turned out to be one of the most infamous gangster managers in the music biz. Don Arden, the guy who tried to pressure them into signing with him in 1970, which, by the way, Arden would eventually become Ozzy's future father-in-law.
What? He had been married into the family? Oh, Don had you by the
Even
balls.
with the formidable
Don had you by the balls.
Behind them, the fallout with Meehan would continue to cast a deep shadow over Sabbath throughout the 70s and up into the 90s.
To the 90s?
Meehan and company not only mismanaged their back catalog, but they continued to profit from a string of compilation albums of Sabbath's most recognizable material. After years of litigation between the two camps, the band was eventually forced to seek an out-of-court settlement. They agreed to pay an undisclosed amount for breaking their contracts with Meehan, but more costly, Sabbath also agreed to give up their rights to the music released while Patrick was their manager.
All the
fire. The best work they would ever
all
produce.
The fire. Patrick Meehan owns all the fire?
Due to personality conflicts and health issues, the band was beginning to fracture. Already deep into alcoholism and drug addiction, Bill Ward suffered multiple health problems, a case of hepatitis, and a mild heart attack, to name two. At the same time, Ozzy became increasingly distant from the band due to musical differences and family issues. As many times before, guitarist Tony Iommi took the lead in writing the bulk of the material.
Tony holding it down, man. So Tony is the man.
Hole in the Sky begins with the hum of amplifiers set at a maximum volume and someone screaming attack. Some people believe the word was chicken, but it wasn't.
So it's attack. Did it do sound like chicken?
This scream was an in-joke delivered by producer Mike Butcher. Sabbath had a supporting act who had a manager who would stand behind them on the stage shouting, "Attack! Attack!" said Butcher. So that's what I shouted from the control room. Hole in the Sky is a dense, purposeful doom classic where you can hear how Tony's guitar tone had gotten even larger than on previous albums, as it loomed over the surging swing of Geezer and Bill, while Ozzy was forced into another high and dramatic vocal. It begins to become clear that Sabotage would mark the finest vocal performance of Ozzy's career. The sheer anger of the music is emphasized by its abrupt look-twice ending, segueing instantly into what appears to be one of Tony's sultry acoustic rambles. Following Hole in the Sky is the 49-second acoustic instrumental Don't Start, Too Late, and was inspired by tape operator David Harris's exasperation with the band plowing into their takes before he'd gotten himself prepared. So that's David saying, "Don't start," and the band chuckling, "Too late." The piece is essentially melodically complex, modern classical, but it's a good example of how Sabbath liked a little light and airy interlude before the hulking monster comes to wreck the village.
The nasty come. The nasty come. Hard.
Wrecking the Village is the supercharged symptom of the universe. From Iommi's staccato riff driving the monster forward towards crazed drum fill, the entire band is on the attack.
Yes.
Not until Judas Priest's Sin After Sin 2 years later would heavy metal sound this intense and overdriven. And in retrospect, you can practically envision the entire new wave of British heavy metal coming to life. Closing out side 1 is the 9-minute, 46-second, which is the longest self-penned Sabbath tune ever, Megalomania, which is a much more involved piece structurally than anything else before it. Highlights include Iommi's snarling, trilling riffs, Ozzy growling out Sting Me and then later Suck Me, and Bill Ward's brilliant use of his cowbell to count off another rhythm change. The song is about suffering from paranoia, depression, and delusions. It is, in fact, an actual psychological disorder. A megalomaniac is a pathological egotist with symptoms like delusions of grandeur and an obsession with power. The song Megalomania is somewhat disturbing, fascinating, and exhausting all at the same time. And definitely an ambitious piece of work.
It is incredible. They did that shit.
Leading off side 2 is the Angus Young type riff and vastly underrated rocker, The Thrill of It All. The song has a well-used hand clap element.
It's bad timing. That's the bad timing for it because it came at the Megalomania. That's just Megalomania is so crazy, bro. Anything that was gonna come after that, it was going to either have to reach that height or it was going to sound like
Mellencamp's Jack and Diane.
You know what I mean?
As well as some of Ozzy's most expressive, upbeat, and heartfelt vocals. Lyrically, there are some brilliant sentiments here, all couched in religion, as Geezer, who wrote the words, wonders why the world is in such a shambles. Geezer got the title of the song from a book he was reading at the time. The Thrill of It All also shows how the band was not sabotaged by management alone. Tape operator David Harris had mistakenly wiped the original master of the song and the band had to re-record it. Rather than get all...
I just gave you props, David. I just gave you props for the interlude and you...
upset about it. The guys credited him on the album with tape operator and saboteur David Harris.
Fucking up, Sabotage.
The next song,
they had to re-record. Well, I don't know. I wonder what the original sounded like. The original probably they re-record because you know you never have the same energy as you had it the first time when you record something and you re-record it. Especially if it's like a good one take, you'll never get that energy again. David, I gave you props, and David, I hate you at the same time because you're wiping out music. I had I'm not gonna say his name because I don't know if you watch my videos, and I don't know if it's people watch my videos or nothing like that. So I'll say a dude that used to make beats for me, but also engineer projects. Lost a whole project of mine, a whole project, y'all. Like I did, like I want to say 10 songs by myself, 3 verses, 2 choruses, each song. Everything was gone. So one song compared to a project, or like when RZA, if you ever watched the Wu-Tang docuseries on Hulu, when RZA lost those albums in the flood. I wish I would have been able to hear the first Inspector Deck album. So just like I would like to hear the first recording of The Thrill of It All. It's crazy.